Hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Think Tank. Should the U.S. increase taxes on the rich? And will this give the U.S. economic prosperity? Now, a lot of this is being talked about, especially in the political spectrum. We're in an election year right now. And the thought process is, if money is taken from the rich, it can then be given to the poor through coercion. And then the poor can take this money and then spend it. And if they spend money, it's going to create jobs, especially in retail. All right? And then those people will have money working in those sectors, and then they'll in turn spend it. And that's how you have a flourishing economy. The problem is, it's nonsense. It makes no sense because it has no foundation. Consumption is not the foundation. You see, production is the foundation that holds up consumption. That's the way it works. You see, without a foundation in an economy, it collapses. So basically, what they want to do is, they want to build this tower of consumption with no foundation, which is production. And the point is if you take money from the rich, all right, they're the job creators, all right, the Walmarts, the big companies, and not just them. I'm not just talking about the really, really, really big companies, who, by the way, create thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. I'm talking about smaller companies, all right, which are being choked by government regulations and high taxation. They themselves, okay, are being driven out of business. And it's because of the regulations that are involved, because of the taxation that's involved, which causes them either to not hire workers, fire workers, or just go out of business, or just go to another country and set up shop somewhere else. See, this is the problem. And they don't understand that. See, they just can't figure it out. They have this Keynesian mindset. It's like a disease. They're just so convinced that it's consumption, that it's actually consumption that creates jobs. But they don't understand that it's the production that's creating the jobs. It's the capital which allows you to grow your business. True capital, okay, money, which allows you to continue to grow your business. If that money is being coerced and taken away and given to the poor, for example, they will consume it, of course, but they'll consume it based on just it being money, but then there's going to be nothing left. You see, but if the money stays with people that have businesses, whether small businesses or large businesses, that money can be reinvested rather than just spent and is no longer there. See, that's the point. So the core, the foundation, has to be production. And you know, I really have a pet peeve with people that know absolutely nothing about economics. And if you want to go to a place where people know absolutely nothing about economics, just go to Washington. Because these goosebrains, these morons, these maniacs, a lot of them, they go from the courthouse to Capitol Hill. They never worked a day in their lives. They know nothing about business. They don't know a balance sheet from a hole in their head. All right? And they go from the courthouse to Capitol Hill, and they start spewing off nonsense. It's the same garbage every time. They talk about the roads, the infrastructure, this, government has to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. They don't explain how it's going to be paid for. They don't explain that. They want to continue to grow government. All right? And they just want to raise taxes. They just don't understand. What they don't understand is that when a person runs a business, okay, there are a lot of challenges involved. You have to hire workers, okay? You have a lot of expenses. You have utilities. You have either rent or you have taxes on a facility that you own. You need machinery to make the things that you need to make. All right? And then you have employees that you have to pay. And taxes is just part of the balance sheet. And the more taxes that they have to pay, the less money they make. It's part of the bottom line. But they can't identify with this. They don't understand that if you put the burden on them even more, all right, and you tax them even more and regulate them even more, they're going to be less productive. And you're going to lose more jobs. But they just can't identify with it. And the ones that can identify with it, there are people that can identify with it in Washington. But what they do is, all right, they do the morally wrong thing. and they try to invigorate and stimulate poor people and anger them. They use an anger tactic. They try to anger them to say, look at these rich people over here. You know, look at them in their corporate private jets, and they're fabulously wealthy, and look at how they live, and look at how you live. Well, we're going to be able to take money away from them and give it to you. But what happens is, it's not just the super rich, the billionaires. They're doing it to people that also have small to moderate sized businesses, okay? All right, these are people that are not that wealthy, and they're hiring in employees. They're hiring a lot of employees overall, if you put them all together. But they want to choke them out too. They want to overtax them also. See, that's the problem. And they use this, it's a tactic, it's an anger tactic to get the poor people angry. They're trying to say, oh, look what conservatives want to do. Look what they want to do. They want to take your checks away. They want you to get less money. Then they really get into it. They say, oh, my mother or my father, right? We have to have them have Medicare. You can't take that away from them. Social Security, you can't take that away. So they look like they're the good guys and they're the bad guys, right? But the bottom line is they're irrelevant. They really don't do anything. These people never worked a day in their lives. From the courthouse to Capitol Hill. They don't know what it's like to run a business. They don't understand economics. So this is what they talk about. Right? They try to use this moral attitude, this anger tactic. But what the people don't realize, the ones voting for them and buying into this, don't realize is as the debt continues to mount, then we have to print more money to service the debt. More money has to be created. And the more you tax, you either tax or you print. If you tax, you're going to drive more businesses to either go offshore or go out of business or don't hire. See, the economy continues to contract. And then if you continue to print money, because you can't tax anymore, then what happens is our creditors, such as our biggest creditor, which is China, they're continuing to hold their economy up, which is an export economy. And as a result of that, they have this peg, and the peg is their currency, which is underpegging our currency. The more we devalue by printing, okay, that's the US dollar. This is the Chinese currency right here, right? And what happens is, the more that's printed, the more that's underpegged on the US dollar, the more it's devalued, the more it pushes down their currency. Meaning their workers, who are already getting paid so little, their purchasing power is going to go even down more. And their standard of living is very low. So it comes to a point where the Chinese worker is not going to be able to buy anything anymore because it's underpegging the US dollar, which is also rapidly losing value. So as a result, they won't be able to sustain it anymore. The Chinese won't be able to do it. I mean, there's no number lower than zero. If their currency is not going to buy anything for themselves, let's say the basics, if their standard of living is so low, but if they can't even get, the basics like enough food or shelter, they're not going to do it anymore. They couldn't do it anymore. And it's kind of interesting, this whole Arab Spring, which happened recently. You know what the real cause of it was? It was caused by inflation. And what happened was, it's the cause of all the inflation that's happening. It's the IMF, it's the euro. See, it's the dollar being the reserve currency, and you have it affecting everything else. And a lot of other problems, of course. There's a lot of the Europeans are causing problems with what's happening with Greece, for example. They're constantly doing the bailouts with Greece, because Greece is just spending too much money. And this is the problem. It's basically debt, chasing more debt. And basically, what can happen here is that the Chinese can no longer keep this peg. They're not going to be able to do it because they won't be able to buy anything. And they called it, what happened with the Arab Spring is people couldn't get the basics because their standard of living is very low, such as in Egypt. It's an overpopulated country, and people, there's rapid unemployment, and the basics that they needed to get, they couldn't get. So there was unrest, there was civil unrest, and this is what happened. It happened in other countries too. It happened like at a very close proximity of time, where you had the dictators in Egypt and in Libya, and then there was unrest in other countries. Those two dictators were overthrown. And then you had civil unrest in the other countries. The reason is it's because of inflation. It's because the dollar is losing, and so the other countries are also losing. And who knows? I mean, what if you have a Chinese Spring? I mean, what if something like that happens? I mean, that would be a disaster. It would be terrible for the United States. Who knows what can happen? I don't even want to think about it. But this is the road that these goosebrains are setting us up for. You see, with their moral arguments that, oh, you know, our parents depend on Social Security, you know. But what good is it if the money's not worth anything? What good is it if they get the checks, right, and the money isn't worth the paper it's printed on? So what good is it if it's not going to buy anything? See, that's the whole point. That's what they don't understand. They don't want to come together and explain to the people that this is unsustainable. They just want to continue this because they know that it's going to help them get reelected. But eventually, it doesn't mean anything. They're irrelevant. And none of these people are going to get reelected because whatever they do is going to be irrelevant. The crisis happens, and then they keep on talking about it. Oh, the mother, I don't want to get grandma thrown under a bus. Well, hey, I have a moral argument too. What about those young kids drowning in debt because of what they advocate? What about having them being thrown under the bus? All right? Because a lot of these poor kids are being thrown under the bus by what they want to do, by trying to sustain the Social Security system that they have without even means testing it. So maybe you can throw some moral arguments against them. You know, some of these anger tactics, these tactics that they used to stimulate people to vote for them. It's just really insane. And these idiots, you know, I think that to be a politician there should be some kind of requirements that at least, you know, people should have some. They should be required to have some experience in the private sector. They should at least own the business, preferably in manufacturing. I know that's difficult because manufacturing is really being destroyed in this country. I mean, we're hemorrhaging jobs in manufacturing, but they should have some work experience as owning a business, having employees, so they really understand. They'll understand what it means to be a business owner and how an economy really works. Not just garbage that they just mimic like parrots because they hear somebody else talk about it, or they're just reading from a teleprompter. That, we need consumption. Yeah, consumption is going to make everything go. And it's really aggravating. And who knows? You know, who knows really what's going to happen? Will the crisis happen first? And then Americans are going to suffer terribly. Or can something be done when things really get really bad, close to it, and maybe something is going to happen then? But it's just such a pet peeve of me when you just hear the same thing over again. And these goose brains, it's the Americans too that just believe it. And this is what it is. A lot of the problems we have is democracy. Democracy is killing this country. Because it's those fools, those schmendricks, all right, that are basically believing what these people have to say, and they're trying to promise them something which doesn't belong to them, which they have no right to promise them in the first place, which is why they're getting their votes, right? That's the 51%, and the 49% are getting outvoted. This is the problem with democracy. What has to happen is we need a republic, and then the government can do what's best for everyone. But I would like your perspective on this matter. It's a very important matter to talk about. Please leave your comments, please subscribe, and thank you for tuning in.